The votes are in, and the results are... Don't let the British public vote on art. The British Academy of Film and Television Arts once again got out of its own lane to hold a public vote on the most influential video game of all time. First up, stop being lazy and make a separate org, you dinguses. You don't see the AFI doing that shit. Wrong people. You're the wrong people. But they figured out a way of exposing their glaring lack of expertise. Just put it to a public vote. Well, British voters, you did this one to yourselves. Let's just read off the list. It has 21 spots. Number 1, Shenmue, 1999. Number 2, Doom, 1993. Number 3, Super Mario Bros. Number 4, Half-Life. Number 5, The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. Number 6, Minecraft. Number 7, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 from this year. Just below that, number 8, Super Mario 64. Number 9, Half-Life 2. Number 10, The Sims. Number 11, Tetris. Number 12, Tomb Raider. Number 13, Pong. Pong at 13. Number 14, Metal Gear Solid. Number 15, World of Warcraft. Number 16, Baldur's Gate 3 from 2023. Number 17, Final Fantasy 7. Number 18, Dark Souls 2011. Number 19, Grand Theft Auto 3 2001. Number 20, Skyrim. Just Skyrim 2011. And for some reason, their poll goes to number 21. I assume so they could stick in fucking Grand Theft Auto 1, 1997. Where to start? Shenmue in number 1 slot. Pong is 13, and there's no other games from the entire 70s. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 just came out and is still patching out bugs. Baldur's Gate 3 is only 3 years old. Why are these on it? This is a list about most influential. And they're giving it to games that just came out. How about almost half of the list being in the same 5-year span? 95 to 99. And there's only 2 games from the 80s. Tomb Raider. Grand Theft Auto 1. You know what's really, really fucking blatantly bad? They don't have the game that got the industry started on this fucking list. Alright, I decided instead of doing a couple stories, I'm just gonna fixate on this one. I think we can fix this list. Let's try to fix this list. It isn't gonna be perfect, but I'm absolutely sure I can Mad Lib a better list, so let's do it. First, we gotta get to the obvious cuts. Kingdom Come 2 and Baldur's Gate 3, they're too new to be on an influence list. So, you know, maybe give it 10 years, then maybe we'll talk. It's very possible these games could be very influential later, but they're certainly not 3 months after fucking release. Grand Theft Auto 1 and Tomb Raider can fuck right off. That's not even... Grand Theft Auto 1 is a nothing game. Tomb Raider did nothing special. Get out of here. You got to have the video game that inspired the people that built the industry. Like, you can pinpoint a game that caused arcade and home consoles to be made. And that's Space War. And guess what? That's 1962. That's 10 years before the first thing they have listed here. You don't get more influential than starting the whole thing. Pong gets moved up to number 2. And it has to share a spot with Magnavox's Tennis, because that was in the market, selling as an in-home console, while Pong copied it and became the arcade craze. Those things happened, and they were both of about equal value for the time and when they happened. So, and they're the same game, so same spot. And also missing was the most popular arcade game of them all, Pac-Man. That's a crazy one to miss. I was going to swap Skyrim for Morrowind because, you know, that's really the one. Like, Skyrim's like a evolutionary endpoint. You know what I mean? Morrowind is much earlier up in that. But then I realized doing that's kind of just a half measure. Because you can clearly point at things that are more influential, like the things that influence that, right? And then I'm like, oh, wizardry. Wizardry inspired both Western and Eastern RPGs. Like all the beginning RPGs, like Shin Megami Tensei, or Megami Tensei and Phantasy Star and Dragon Quest, those are all inspired directly by wizardry. Dragon Quest is just straight missing, so I put that, so we need to put that in. There's a couple games where I'm like, they are genre starters or have significant influence. I don't know if they're big enough to be there. Things like that were like Civilization and Myst. I remember when I was younger, there was a GamePro magazine issue in 2004, and it had two different head-to-heads. And one was between EverQuest and WoW, and the other was between Half-Life 2 and Halo 2. And that's pretty pertinent in this list, because there isn't room to put all of those things. Remember, this list is only, apparently, I don't know why 20. I still don't know why it's 21. We're going to follow that. It's going to be 21 games. But yeah, we have to fit this in 21. So there is obviously stuff that's going to not make the cut that is right afterwards, right? I'm going to say that WoW's sales victory, the fact that it just got into way more people's hands, makes it more influential than even MMOs that happened before it. And Halo 2, there's this argument between like a game's intrinsic qualities and what it did, right? Halo 2 changed how people played multiplayer games on console. And I was going to give Half-Life 2 some more points for the Source Engine until I actually looked up how many games were made on the Source Engine, and it's significantly less than you thought. And half those games were worse versions of things that had a pre-Source Engine version, like Day of Defeat. All right, so how does the list actually come out? Let's see. Here's the list. My official, the most influential games of all time list, as inspired by BAFTA's awful list. And I'll give the reasoning why I'm putting them with each one. Number 1, Space War, 1962. This game literally started it all. If it had just been like a collegiate academic experiment that was just done between those people, it wouldn't be here at all. But the difference is that those people who made Space War were constantly bringing other people in to try it out, and that led to the people who literally started arcade gaming trying it and trying to make an arcade game version of it. That's how arcade games got started, beyond the electromechanical stuff and pinball and stuff like that. So it has to be. It has to be. They're literally... Atari wouldn't exist without Space War. So it has to be number 1. Number 2, Magnavox Odyssey's tennis game / Pong, the arcade game, which both came out in 1972. The Magnavox Odyssey existed in various forms before 72, released to home markets in 72, became extremely popular. The entire first generation of video game consoles are all literal clones of it. They're all the same thing. That's why they all got sued and lost and had to pay Magnavox a shit ton of money to license under them. Even Atari had to do that. Pong is the arcade gamification of that tennis game, and it caused arcades to blow up. So, like the initial boom. So this is it in Space War. Maybe you could argue, maybe it's not as important, but I'm gonna say that they would have never made that Pong machine if they hadn't first tried to make a Space War machine and failed. So number 3, Pac-Man, 1980. Again, like, is it the intrinsic qualities of a game that make it the most influential? Perhaps not. In this case, the thing that makes it important is Pac-Man was max social contagion of video game awareness. This is what put these things on people's radar beside like niche use and like really expensive rich people, $1,000 in today's money plus consoles that play one game. This is the one. There are plenty of other popular arcade games, but you didn't get a fever. You didn't get a societal headline-inducing fever the way Pac-Man did, and that's important. Number 4, Super Mario Bros. 1985. Besides being a really good game and basically getting Nintendo off to an amazing start, the point that you have to make here is that this is the first post-1983 video game market crash success story. And because of that, it made Nintendo the dominant player during that generation of games. It had like a 92% market share globally. And Super Mario Bros. As a pack-in game that was high quality, that everyone liked, ushered that in. Number 5, Tetris. Technically 1984. I'm going to say that 1984 is the computer version probably, as the Game Boy version is the one that's really important here. Tetris is like the purest video game ever made. We're not arguing about how good a game is, though. The reason it's amazing is that it made handhelds successful. A lot of people don't know this. There were handheld consoles before the Game Boy. The problem was, none of them, they were all expensive. They had one game in them, and they couldn't get the mass market appeal that you need for a lower entry console like a handheld. Tetris checked all of those boxes. Everybody can like and play Tetris. There's this entire genre of puzzle games that are based off of it. It's definitely a top 5 influential game. Number 6, I have put Wizardry here. Wizardry, 1980. Make sure we know that. Wizardry, the first Wizardry came out in 1980. And even from the first game, people were playing it and noticing it. If you go do any interview for any RPG developer in the era of games that people are more commonly aware of, like your Dragon Quest, your Final Fantasies, your Megami Tenseis, those are all Japanese. But even on the Western side, your Ultimas and all that, it's Wizardry, man. It's the common root. It's the common ancestor between Western and Japanese RPGs. It's your number 6. Number 7, Dragon Quest. Right after Wizardry, in terms of influence, RPGs are one of the largest, subgenres of games. They're responsible for a lot of technological developments in games in terms like, we want to tell a story, we need more memory capacity, we need more graphic capacity, things like that. We want a longer game. So much game technology is driven by the demands that RPGs were asking for, and Dragon Quest is one of those games that was willing to try to make a game even when the technology wasn't there to do it. And it influenced way too many things. Number 8, I didn't even say this when I was making my general notes about the last list. Street Fighter 2 wasn't on the list. Street Fighter 2, Christ's sake, not Street Fighter 1, that might as well be a prototype. Street Fighter 2, it made fighting games practically. And it sort of revived arcade culture after the initial 83 crash. Like, there's still plenty of arcade games that are getting stuff in, but in terms of building an actual culture of people gathering to meet at the arcades, and there being a competitive scene and stuff like that, Street Fighter 2, 1991, baby, that's your number 8. Number 9, they did get this one, Doom. I didn't rate it as high because everything else I said sounded too significant, but Doom deserves to be right up here as well. I mean, it's you can argue Wolfenstein, but for like what really matters, this is where first-person shooters became serious and noted in society. See, that's the other part. Sometimes somebody can do something first, but it doesn't reach enough people to create influence. Doom did do that. And then the list gets a bit harder. I feel like after you get past that, A lot of these did really interesting things, and some of these, I have some honorable mentions at the end here for things that, like, man, I can't believe I couldn't make the list. Making lists is hard. This is why the BAFTA just passed it off to fucking any rando who's played like 2 games in their life to vote on a poll, to publish and put under their, you know, their institutional legitimacy over people that don't know what they're fucking talking about. Not that they do, because they're BAFTA. They're a film and television organization. They don't... I'm getting caught off guard. This is going to be a long one, isn't it? Because I don't have almost anything I want to cut what I'm saying here. Number 10, Civilization. I put Civilization, the first one, 1991. Strategy games. Strategy games are huge, and there's so many types. And almost all of the major ones branch off of Civilization. Whether you're talking about your real-time strategy, your grand strategy games, 4X strategy games, I'd argue even like tactic-style games, Civilization is a common thread. Number 11, Super Mario 64, 1996. So one thing I do think people forget is they don't know the year, they don't see the timeline so closely, and they feel like, yeah, Super Mario 64, the first 3D platformer, right? And no, the N64 was the last console to the scene in the PlayStation, Saturn, N64 era. It was not the first platformer. What it was the first really good 3D platformer. There were plenty of attempts, but none of them were very good. I don't think there are almost any exceptions of there being like a very good feeling controlling 3D platformer game. And that is something that has reverberations into practically any 3D movement game from that point forward. So it might even be able to go higher up. It becomes very hard to decide where these things land. As I'm arguing this, I'm going to say almost it should take the number 10 spot from Civ, but you know, I already made the list. Number 12, crazy one missing, Pokemon Red, Green, and Blue, 1996. This is its own genre of game. This is the largest franchise in the world that influences games as much as you can, as well as other properties. And also, this along with Tetris, this was like the second salvo that truly made it that handhelds were a viable system to build and develop on, even non-small games. Like Pokemon's not a small game. And this made it say, hey, those are viable and can do extremely well on handhelds. Number 13, Final Fantasy VII. I do not have the original Final Fantasy on this list. Final Fantasy 1 through 6 are all amazing games. Being an amazing game isn't what gets you on an influence list, though. The reason Final Fantasy VII is on this list instead of those other ones is not because it's a better game. You can argue it's a better game. But the reason it's doing it is because it changed how much video games cost to make. Period. There is before and after Final Fantasy VII when it comes to game budgets. This is the large budget, long duration, story-based game, full 3D with CGI cutscenes game. And it was the best-selling motherfucking thing you'd ever fucking see. And it told every other player in the industry, oh, we put more money, we do bigger shit, we get that money. And it never changed. It started internally, where Square Enix kept trying to one-up itself, but over time that bled into even more companies trying to take that route. There's one other game that does something similar that's a little bit farther down the list. But I think Final Fantasy VII did it in the more significant and immediate way. Number 14 is Half-Life, the first Half-Life, 1998. I don't have an extreme amount to say about this, besides the fact that it is a game that took a look at what was happening with first-person games and said, we can do a first-person shooter that's beyond shooting. And any first-person shooter that is anything that isn't gunning down enemies basically has Half-Life in its lineage. Number 15, Halo 2, 2004. I talked about this a bit before, but even though Halo 1 was a good game with good multiplayer, the Xbox Live component of Halo 2 changed how people play multiplayer video games. It's the last real we also played on the couch game in the advent of the online competitive shooter. You might be able to push it up higher. It's tough. It's tough. Number 6. This is the other one. Metal Gear Solid, 1998, 1 year after Final Fantasy VII. Again, large budget, story-based games. But what this thing did in addition, it came after FF7, it's a year later, so it's not the first one to do it, but its success cemented that yes, that process does work. And the other thing that people really often forget, voice acting. This game was pretty much fully voice acted for a large story-based narrative game. Most of the time you'd get voice acting through sound bites or in short format. This was an entire game that had it. And also, you could also argue a lot of cinematic film-based camera techniques really got popularized when people saw them used in this, and people tried to adapt that themselves. But the voice acting is extremely important. Number 17, World of Warcraft 2004. Again, I think you could argue EverQuest as well here, but my shifting factor is that EverQuest did not do as well as World of Warcraft. It might be older, it might be more it might be, and it's not more influential. See, there's two ways to look at influence. You can say how many people played this or how many people experienced this, or you can take the method that I take when I think about things like this, and I call it the gas principle, which is the give a shit principle, which is how many people who give a shit did you influence? How many people who went on to go do things and make things and build things did you influence? And I think World of Warcraft, because of it, is one of the few cases where numbers win. So many more people played World of Warcraft than EverQuest that it had to have influenced more people. Again, maybe you can point me to some really significant players that said they were EverQuest only. But if we're just going off of logic here, I'm going to say World of Warcraft won out here. Sorry, I don't even like it. Let's see. Number 18. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, 1998. This is the weakest link in my list. It's not the bottom of my list, but it is the weakest link in my list because I can't tell you a specific reason why I think it needs to be here. It's the only game on my list that the best reason is it's just good. And what I think it is I think the things that people take from Zelda are not things where they try to make a Zelda-like game. Like, actually try to think, okay, in 64, like 1999 to 2001, who's trying to make a Ocarina of Time like? And it's actually really hard to come up with games. What I think is there's a lot of very small elements in this that bled their way into a bunch of different types of games. And it might just be one of the few games here that's here for sheer inspired to want to make games because of how good it is. You know what I mean? People who play it, they play that like, I want to make games. That might be the real reason. It's hard. A lot of these could probably say the same thing, which is why it's low on the list. Number 19, Grand Theft Auto 3. 3. You know, the one that actually did something. It created sandbox games. It created and popularized sandbox games. It expanded the audience out to a whole another type of player in the PS2 era that just wasn't around before that. Honestly, this is one of the few games where I played it and I didn't play it at all to play the story or anything. I literally played Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, and San Andreas, and I really did just play them like sandbox games. And I don't really play games like that, but it's undeniable the influence that has. And then the two newer games are the bottom of the list. I don't think that's the only reason they're there. It's just they happen to end up this way. Number 20, I put Minecraft, 2011. Crafting games, survival games, these are genres that have sprung forth from Minecraft. I would also argue that like the comfy game subgenre is also just purely coming from Minecraft. It's also an indie game success story. It's the only true independently no, Space War. Nope, that was institutionally funded. Nope, Minecraft is the only independently funded game that has enough influence to break through all of these corporate and institutional endeavors. And number 21, it's Dark Souls. This one was one of the ones that were newer that, yeah, that one also needs to be on the list. Basically every action RPG that came after 2011 wants to be this. And yes, I know Demon Souls. I played Demon Souls before Dark Souls came out. Don't tell me that shit. Dark Souls put itself on more platforms. It was more decipherable. And more people played it. Therefore, more people based shit off of it. And also, Dark Souls had things like the interconnected world elements that gets borrowed just as much as the action RPG mechanics. So that's my list. You know what wasn't on this list? That did, even when I was really earnestly trying to think about these things, Shenmue doesn't make a top 21. Much less gets the first spot. But Shenmue is on I do have an honorable mentions list. And those honorable mentions are Shenmue, The Sims, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Myst. A quick reason for them. Shenmue, it's the life integration elements, the doing things on a schedule, the third-person open-worldness. These are all big elements. The problem I have with saying that this makes Shenmue the most influential is that I don't think Shenmue is the game that people pointed to when they were trying to make games like that, especially these days. I think it's a misattributed inspiration. I think there are other things that were more influential on people, even if they did it later. So I don't think Shenmue deserves to be in that number 1 spot, even if that's the reasoning people are making. Number 2 is The Sims. This is a wide appeal type game. It came after SimCity, but it was definitely more influential, I'd say, than SimCity itself was. I also think this influences like the Playhouse games, the comfy games. Your Animal Crossing comes from this, but here's the problem. Why it doesn't get higher in the list. How many other actual series can you think of that are that? There are them. There's a couple, but how many? How much influence? And I don't think there's enough. Sonic the Hedgehog. Oh, you just like Sonic? No. Oh, it changed platforming games? A little, but no, that's not why it's the honorable mention. This one's a little deep cut, I guess, but the more I think about it, the more true I find it. If you do any kind of digging in history during the console wars kind of era, I think you might see where I'm coming from here. So, remember how I said that Nintendo had like 92% market dominance? Right? Okay, now turn around. Think about this list I just told you. And think about how many of those games would have been allowed to come out if Nintendo was the only hardware publisher under its own censorship regime that they, bragged about publicly all the time. So many of these games would never have been made. The only thing that stopped that from happening was the Sega Genesis. And people forget this, the Sega Genesis took Nintendo's market share for a significant, 2 to 3 years. And that's, in a way, that sort of saved the industry. And it did that by taking the US market. and Sonic the Hedgehog was the reason it took the US market. So it's a bit of a stretch, but Sonic the Hedgehog is the reason that other video game hardware publishers were able to break back into the market. And that's crazy. And that's why it's not on the list. It's only an honorable mention, because it takes a lot of pulling the threads to understand that. And I don't want to hear people fucking argue about Sonic the Hedgehog as a game. And then the last honorable mention I had was Myst. And it's a weird one. It's not good enough to be on the list, but I think about how many... It's almost Half-Life. It's almost like Half-Life. I think about how many games that are like first-person games that are not just combat, and Myst has a heavy Myst has a heavy element in popularizing that. Myst was also super cheap, could play on anything. It got a lot of mass appeal in a way, and there's tons of Myst clones. But the thing about things that have clones is clones aren't successful. The influence isn't that strong. So part of influence is how much influence can the things that are derived from you also produce by being so good that they have their own gravity to them. Oh my god, this video is going to be so fucking long. I shouldn't have made this in the news format. I just wanted to make my own fucking list after reading this stupid one. I don't know, what do you guys think? In the comments, tell me your own lists. Tell me where I fucked up, and tell me if there's anything you think is just misarranged, too, because there's a couple spots I'm considering. Also, Legend of Zelda, help me find the reason why I think it needs to be here. All right, shit.